Yes, Ben Roethlisberger is returning, but he's also not who he used to be. Now, will that change? Could he have having a whole entire offseason? Can that help him? The AFC North preseason division power rankings is here. I'm Cody Roark, Pro Football Network, joined alongside by Dalton Miller, our lead NFL analyst, and Ian Cummings, and we are going to be breaking down how we see the division playing out before the season even begins based on the moves that each team in the division made in the offseason. Kicking things off with the AFC North, a tough division, in my opinion, coming into this season. I have a lot of expectations for for three teams, and there's one team that's surprisingly on the outside. But Dalton, I'm going to throw it to you. When you look at the AFC North, how do you see things playing out here in 2021? Where do you have teams in terms of ranking right now as first in the division or the bottom of the division?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm writing all of these divisional previews. I'm writing all of the individual team previews. And when I went through it, I was really surprised at just how much the Pittsburgh Steelers lost in the offseason. Now, I knew that they had lost a couple of pieces, Mike Hilton, Steven Nelson, Bud Dupree, on the defensive side of the ball. You couple that with the second toughest schedule in the NFL this year, and it looks like they're going to have a really tough time competing in a division that continues to get better around them as they kind of age out. But the biggest issue with the Pittsburgh Steelers is that they lost almost their entire offensive line, and that's really the big loss for them, even on top of or more than on the defensive side of the ball, because this is a quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger who gets rid of the ball really quickly anyways, does not push the ball downfield as much anymore. I don't see how this offense can be successful with this offensive line that they're putting out there. It was just a lot to lose in the offseason. The opposite end of the spectrum, the Cleveland Browns might have the best overall roster in the entire NFL, outside of maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's a really, really strong roster from top to bottom. They made a ton of good additions in the offseason compared to the Steelers' losses. And so those are my top and bottom of the AFC North right now.
Well, how do you see it playing out, too? Like, who's your number 2 team? Who's the number 3 team? In what order, too? Because you've got Cleveland on top. You got Pittsburgh as 4th last in the division. How does it play out between Baltimore and Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that the Baltimore Ravens are the second best team in the AFC North, and I think that they can still compete for the AFC North division title as well. They're a good football team, and Lamar Jackson is obviously a difference maker. Say what you want about his, quarterback skills. He is an electric playmaker, and they have finally tried to figure out the wide receiver position with Sammy Watkins. They still have Marquise Hollywood Brown, and they just got, why can't I think of his name? Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. Dude, that's what I'm in NFL mode now. NFL draft is gone for me, baby.
They also got Tylan Wallace too. So
they also got Tylan Wallace in the 4th round as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what that team does. Cincinnati Bengals are a sneaky fun team. I don't like some of the moves that they made, getting rid of Carl Lawson and adding Trey Hendrickson to replace him. I felt like that was a bit of a downgrade at about the same price point overall. But that offense is going to be a lot of fun. They're going to let Joe Burrow really chuck the ball. And Jamar Chase and him already have a fantastic rapport between the two of them. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Burrow ended up throwing for 5,000 plus yards this year.
Ooh, okay. So we got some hot takes here. I like it. It's a bold projection. I do like it. He was on track. They're going to chuck it. Well, I felt like last year before his injury, they had a really strong chance, I think, to sneak into a wild card spot. And I think that if Joe Burrow didn't get injured, I think that they probably would have had a strong case to maybe battle for that last wild card spot last season. I think the division is going to play out really different this year. I'll talk about that later. But Ian, let's get to you. How do you see the AFC North playing out? Who's your number 1 team, number 2, 3, and who's dead last in the division and why?
Yeah, I'm probably going to have a hierarchy similar to what Dalton and you were thinking. I'm thinking the Browns and the Ravens. To me, it's kind of like two-tiered division. I'm looking at the Browns and the Ravens as the top 2, and I think the Bengals and the Steelers are kind of 3 and 4. I think there's a little bit of a gap between those teams. I want to believe in the Steelers still. Mike Tomlin is still one of the best coaches in the NFL, but the fact of the matter is the roster lost a lot. Pouncey, DeCastro, Villanueva, that offensive line is turning over a lot. And while I do have hope for guys like rookie Kendrick Green and Kevin Dotson to kind of carry the torch, I don't think it's going to be right away that they're going to be at the level they've been, especially for a quarterback like Roethlisberger, who needs that strong blocking unit to be comfortable. So I'm a little hesitant there. And then their defense, too, they lost a little bit. Like Dalton said, that corner room is really suspect. So I'm not super optimistic about them. I do think Tomlin will keep them respectable, but it might be a little bit worse of a year than we're accustomed to seeing. With the Bengals, I don't know. That's interesting. It all depends on Zac Taylor and how he ages in this year, because I do think that offense, like we've said, has a ton of firepower, right? And Joe Burrow coming back has chemistry with Ja'Marr Chase. The offensive line, still not great, but it got a little bit better, I think. And the defensive line too. I think, honestly, losing Carl Lawson was bad, but I do like the additions they made. They got my guy Joseph Asai in the draft, who I was very high on, Cam Sample. So they added a few good pieces. So I'm very intrigued, and they got the best safety in the league, Jesse Bates. So you'd like to see that too. I do think it's a two-tier division. I think the Browns right now have the stronger roster slightly than the Ravens, but those are both top 10 rosters, top 12 rosters in the league, I think. Very strong teams. Kevin Stefanski, Baker Mayfield heading into year 2. Very excited to see what's in store for them. I think it's going to be the Browns and the Ravens vying for that title, though.
I like it, Ian. I really do. And I actually want to throw something out there, too. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, I know you're going to watch this. You're going to say, what are these guys talking about? Look, this is all subject to change. We are just looking at the writing on the wall. We're looking at the offseason moves in comparison to the rest of the teams, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, Ben Roethlisberger's returning, but he's also not who he used to be. Now, will that change? Could he have having a whole entire offseason? Can that help him? It's certainly possible. The additions of Najee Harris, I think, is going to be huge. But there are still so many outlying questions with this Steelers team, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Opposite of T.J. Watt, you lose Bud Dupree in free agency. Can they have an effective pass rusher opposite of him this upcoming season? That's a big storyline. And Dalton, Ian, another thing I want to throw out there too, my ranking, how I view it right now, based on our preseason division power rankings, I've got Cleveland up at the top. I mean, a lot of firepower on the offensive side of the ball coming back. OBJ coming back from his ACL, a healthy Chubb as well, alongside Kareem Hunt. But not to mention only that, the defensive side of the ball, they go and they add Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They get Greg Newsome at cornerback. They are loading up on the defensive side of the ball, and they also shocked the world a little bit, again, their playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think right now, based on how things have played out, Cleveland is the favorite, number 1. Baltimore, I think that they've loaded up their roster a little bit as well. They're not happy with how the playoff battle that they had last year. They are not happy with how things ended. It exposed some areas where they need some help. They went out and they addressed that, and they got somebody. And also, you have Mark Andrews coming back, which is Lamar Jackson's favorite target, not to mention a running game. But the question I have, too, between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati being the 3 and 4, I think the Cincinnati, as you mentioned, Ian, there's a lot of questions surrounding Zac Taylor. This is a make-or-break year for him. The pressure is on. And so I think that's why we saw the emphasis of them going out and reuniting Joe Burrow with Ja'Marr Chase, having T. Higgins there. I mean, they are a very underrated offensive squad right now. I know the questions are going to be around the offensive line, whether or not they can keep him upright. That's going to be a storyline we continuously follow. But our divisional power rankings will change every single week, and you're going to catch us on Pro Football Network Daily here on PFN 365 on Twitter, also on the YouTube channel Pro Football Network Daily coverage. We're going to bring in our NFL insider Adam Beasley, our fantasy analyst Eric Moody. You're going to get a lot of insight and analysis here on PFN Daily. But closing thoughts, gents, before we get out of here. Is there anything you want to throw to Steelers fans, Bengals fans, Ravens fans, or even Browns fans before we get off here?
Yeah, I would just like to point out, in our preseason power rankings for the entire NFL, we had the Cleveland Browns at 5 and the Baltimore Ravens at 6. That's 2 very, very close rosters right there. Steelers fans, I know that we've been a little bit pessimistic towards your football team in this video here. I do and would like to point out that Mike Tomlin has never once had a losing season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, a lot of people might say they're due for it. But I think that goes to show just how great of a coach he is, because he's done that, with guys like Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges at quarterback. So I am a little bit weary about my pessimism towards the Pittsburgh Steelers just because of that history of success.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that. I mean, also, it's kind of expected, right? I mean, franchises, they move in cycles. You have good years and bad years, and the Steelers have had a lot of good years on top of one another, going back to Chuck Noll. Okay, this has been a long time. They've been successful for a very long time. This happens, okay? These swells happen. You have to expect them at some point. Now, Mike Tomlin is still a great coach. I think he's going to keep them competitive. But at the end of the day, how far are you going to go? And there's the extra game in there. I could very much see them like maybe having a record of 6-11 or 7-10 or maybe 8-9, not quite being at that playoff level. But Tomlin, as very trepidatious as this team is, he'll keep them respectable. And then the Bengals too. What's going to happen there? It all depends on Zac Taylor. I think they have the talent to compete. I really do. I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow with the weapons he has. And we're just going to have to see. I think right now it's Baltimore and Cleveland up at the top, vying for that top spot. And then Cincinnati maybe can be a sleeper. And then the Steelers, you can never quite count them out with Mike Tomlin.
Could there be 3 teams in the AFC North that represent in the NFL playoffs here in 2021? We're going to continue to monitor it. We're going to break it down on Pro Football Network Daily. And on the next installment, we are going to be covering the AFC East. So stay tuned to that on the YouTube channel and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Pro Football Network.